Oh, okay, all right, then, okay, all right. Okay. Not a minute to go.
Why would they think they wouldn't have to go through the TRT process?
You know the ins and outs.
You always go through the So Jason, I have to, whoops, we've been gaggled.
6 p.m. Will we please call the meeting to order?
Doesn't go up any higher.
Okay. Everybody ready?
Angela, oh, yeah, Angela misses us.
Roll call, please.
Thank you.
Virginia Brown,
Present.
Teresa Doan, Truman G, Timothy Papadakis,
Here.
David Lamont,
Here.
Gary Libby,
Here.
Tracy Beamer,
Here,
Danny Webster.
We have a quorum, so we will proceed. I would like to have the pledge. I'll lead that, and then Tracy is going to do the invocation. Will you all please stand?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please bow your heads.
dear Lord, just thank you for the wisdom that you impart to us. May we be open to it and let it guide us in our discussion and deliberations concerning this city that we love. Amen.
Amen.
Please be seated.
In Jesus' name.
I would like to first thank Angela Cameron for joining us this evening, and I would like to come down down below and have her come up with us, please.
Like the suit. Very nice. Well, we don't have the new thing yet, but I've got it in my calendar.
Angela, we appreciate the hours you have spent helping us with the Main Street redevelopment, Main Street South Latch redevelopment area, and all the leadership you have given to our city. And may you be very happy in having this beautiful plaque on your new office wall, because we're very, very proud of you to go to the Ocean Center and lead us. Particularly after serving on the ad board for 15 years with you? Yeah. Right. I was on it for 14 to 15 years myself. Award of appreciation presented to Angela Cameron for outstanding service and education as a member and dedication as a member of the City of Daytona Beach, Main Street South Atlantic Redevelopment Area Board, 2009 to 2011. Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you. Nice surprise, thanks. But you know, you guys
are all in good hands. Hey, Angela Cameron. Yeah, you got, I mean, I know that this board is in great hands, and I have full faith in you in doing whatever is the most positive thing and the right thing to do for the redevelopment area. And I really am going to miss you, but I know Tracy's going to line us up some Cafe 101 trips. But thank you. I really enjoyed it. And I really do miss all of you because this is one of my favorite meetings. So,
you know that the Ocean Center we have now is in much better hands.
yes, thank you very much.
Much better hands now that you're over at the Ocean Center.
Thank you very much. And I would stay and join you tonight, but my 4-year-old grandson, I promised him a movie tonight, so he's the boss, so
He's
sorry. But thank you for this. It was a nice surprise, and it will go on my wall in my new office. So
Good.
thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye. We're going to miss
Hey,
you.
can we have pause on you just for a photograph here? Would the board members all come to the center here
Okay.
behind? It'll just take a second.
Okay.
Right down here with Angela, right next to her, and you can. We'll do the faux.
Here, I always go in the back because I'm so tall.
Right. Like that.
Yeah, I can.
Oh. Let's get you all in.
Can you get us all in?
I sure can.
Wow,
I
as
sure
tall as we
can.
are?
Yeah, a little short ones will be down.
A little bit. Okay, wonderful, wonderful. all standing next to each other. Smile. Wonderful, wonderful. One more time. Thank you very much. Okay.
No.
Oh, God, where have I been?
This is low tech.
No more flashing. Okay.
Speaking about tech, I was with girls in the store the other day.
Yeah.
And she was doing something with kids. So I walked in and I go, "Oh, what the hell are you doing?" She goes, "Oh, you haven't seen this." She goes, "Here, watch this." She took whatever she was, a hack. She scanned it with her cell phone. And she typed in, she goes, "What's the zip code?" Gives it to her. 32118. Typed in 32118. And the whole everywhere 32118.
That carries it for what price?
You know, like had us, not if we were
Yeah.
right on.
Yeah.
But then she goes, "Yeah." She goes,
I have had a request from a board member for us to wait to change the election of the new chairman and vice chairman until everyone is here. If you want to do that, fine. If you don't want to, fine.
Are we missing somebody?
Yeah, Dino,
Oh.
yes.
Okay.
I'd like to move ahead and
That's fine with me.
elect officers. There's a huge opportunity that someone else might not be here at each meeting, and I don't think we can really, if we had more than one or two or three, then I could understand it,
That's
but,
fine.
okay.
That's fine.
I was just thinking it would be fair to Dino because we did it last month we didn't have everybody here last month and we continued it. I was just trying to be fair to the new members.
Last month, you had 2 new board members coming on with one opening, and Teresa was on vacation.
Yeah.
So you had Teresa, and with Angela's resignation, we had a second opening last meeting.
Yeah.
Whatever, that's fine with me. So, well, then shall we go ahead with the election then?
Actually, then, if we do, I would like to nominate Dan Webster as chair, if he's interested in,
I'll second that.
if you're interested in taking it.
"I will say no."
Okay.
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 Okay,
And I'll second.
okay. All
And-
those.
Well,
any
wait, are there any other
nominations?
nominations
Tim,
for chair?
Nominate the vice chair, Dave Lamont.
Lamont, David,
Fine.
okay.
I was
Any
gonna say, I'll
other
second
nominations?
the
Do you
nomination.
want to do a secret ballot or?
You can't, it's a public meeting.
Okay, all right. All right.
We can't.
All right. So, all those in favor of Dan, please raise your hand.
Oh,
It's up.
okay, I was gonna say, that's, okay.
4,
That's
5,
right.
6.
For Dan?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I thought for you, you'd vote. Don't worry about it.
okay. Dan, I think that
You're
it
chair.
looks to me as if you're going to be our new chair. And
Should
I'm
be for
happy to
vice
have
chair.
you take the seat over.
Nominated for vice chair.
Okay, how
No, I
about
thought he
vice chair?
nominated you for chair.
Well,
Oh.
nominate Dave for chair.
N-
I mean,
No,
for vice chair, for vice chair.
okay, Timmy, you're confusing us.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
no.
Any
All right.
other nominations for vice chair?
Actually, I'd like to nominate Gary Libby for vice chair.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, all right, for David Lamont for vice chair, please raise our hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, David, you'll remain in the vice chair position for
Good,
us.
I don't gotta move.
Okay,
No.
no, how about that? I guess you and I can switch places then. I have, thanks everyone for all the help you've given me as the chairman of the board over the past year. And I'm sure that Dan will be a wonderful leader.
Thank you for serving,
Oh, you're welcome.
Virginia. Thank you very much.
And I'd like first to say thank you, Virginia, for the last year and a half you've chaired. and I think everybody joins me in that. So, all right, let's see, the agenda. Approval of the meeting minutes from July 13th.
So moved
wait.
as printed.
I have a couple of changes.
Well, first, let's get the motion, and then we'll go to the changes.
Actually, we usually do the changes and then move with changes. Is what we
You
usually
don't
do.
move
but-
for additions or corrections to the minutes after a motion's been made?
No, we're a
They're
little looser.
Okay.
Little less formal than that usually.
Um,
Tracy usually points out the errors. And we correct
and
them,
then we do it. One question, between the bottom of page 2 and the top of page 3, it looks like we're missing some information. We go from talking about security to video to the Coliseum. And I believe Captain Hoffman actually had some comments about the Coliseum before we ever got to Reed saying anything. So it actually looks like we're missing some minutes, so if we could just make sure.
I mean, I read that, but isn't it, that's what the next paragraph does?
Captain Hoffman spoke about the Coliseum before Reed did. He actually brought up the whole thing and had more information on it. And then page 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like about the middle of the page, Mrs. Remark, the importance of protecting the E-zone is the last living part of the city's economic. I'm not sure I said that. If I did,
I
it
like
will
that.
stand, but if we could just double check whatever that language actually may have been. And then page 6. Just before the ISB streetscape, Mrs. Remark, if you go to the second sentence, I don't think I'm a he, I think I'm a she stated. Okay. Don't you dare, Timmy.
And number 3, on the first page there, Mr. Lamont made a motion to approve the minutes. No, that's not right. No, number 1, Mr. Lamont called the meeting order at 6:31. I was here and I called.
Oh, that's right. I forgot that one.
When you was sharing your I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay, no problem.
Okay. Now, Gary, now you could do motion to approve with.
Well, no, you go ahead.
With
Chris.
respect
Okay.
to Tracy's
You're doing real well. You go ahead.
comments and the fact I don't think we have a set of final minutes, I think it would be better to table the approval of them until we
Okay.
have those
Till next month?
issues addressed.
Okay.
Okay. Staff reports, code enforcement.
Bring these back.
Officer Fitzgerald.
Good evening. This will be the information for August. In this last month, we've opened up 187 cases. That will be all of us because there's no way I could do that. It will be 9 of us. Out of the 187 cases, 105 are still open and 82 have been closed. At this time, 314 cases are open in Main Street area for the total. 9 abandoned buildings, 1 fire damage, graffiti. So as you see as we go down, lot clearance, there's 12 right now. Maintenance code is what Daytona Proud is dealing with right now, 236. People working without a permit, 10. Occupational licenses, 9. Other, I'm not sure what the other is, 8. Outside storage, parking issues, 8. Sign violations, 6. Trash pickups, 1. Unsafe structures, 3. And zoning issues, 2. So we're pretty much, we have a, pretty much even on all the stuff except for the maintenance code. At this time, there's 314 cases. At this time, this year, we have 102 lot clearances right now. and 164 for this month. Just this month, we have 144 lot clearances in just this one month, and 164 cases for the maintenance code. So those have been hit pretty well. Last year at the same time, we would have had 146 cases. I'm sorry, it's 144 cases, and the maintenance code would have been 67, and right now it's, that's last year's, 67. So we've, between last year and this year, you got almost 100 more cases of the maintenance code issues.
More like 150.
2010, between 7/6 and 8/11, we have a grand total of 144 cases. And this year, we have 164 cases. So the Donor has been doing a lot, really pushing hard. And we've moved in north of Main Street, and we each have a street, and we're just going house to house to house to house. And people seem to be okay with it because they know that everyone's having things done at the same time.
Now, aren't you sending out some letters to the homeowners or the property owners beforehand?
Yeah, they got letters months ago that this is coming. I'm on Halifax and Peninsula, so I pushed that building at 245 North Halifax, that building that's been in really bad shape. I went ahead and filed against them and went ahead, so they pulled permits, they're starting to go ahead and fix the structure up, moving them right along. And they're gonna put money into it, and it's supposed to be very nice when they're finished.
Is that the apartment building?
The apartment building, yeah.
Okay, I just don't remember getting a letter at my place.
Some were handed out by hand by the COPs, and some were mailed about between 3 and 4 months ago.
But you're going from river to ocean?
River to Ocean, Main Street to Oak Ridge right now. And, we're about halfway done, I think, is with this. We'll be done by the end of the month. We're going to try to be done by the end of the month. It's an awful lot to write up.
Mr. Chairman?
Any board comments?
If you drive from the South Peninsula into the Main Street redevelopment area on any of the north-south thoroughfares, you start to see the effect of bay tree disease that's coming from the south to the north. As a matter of fact, by the time you get just to the south of Silver Beach, you start to see forests of mature trees dying. And this is a real problem that's marching from the south to the north, and it's going to hit, and it has already, the South Atlantic, the Main Street area. Do we have any programs in place that could aid property owners in the removal of dead trees, especially trees as a result of this really rampant disease? It's probably going to decimate most of the mature bay trees on the beach side. If not, when we get to the program area, I'd like us to maybe have a category that could be an emergency catch-all category like this. I was heading south on Peninsula and got to Lenox, and every house on Lenox had tree trimmers out there and wood stacked up, and I mean it's going to be a really significant challenge for the city because of all of the mature trees that are on the peninsula, over half are bay trees. So we're facing a real interesting situation, and I'm just wondering if there could be even some gesture of support on the part of the city for homeowners, both commercial and residential, to help them. And the trees have to be taken all the way down.
I can't speak for the Beautification Tree Advisory Board, but I know they're discussing that now. So that it might be good for them to maybe give us some information, and I could put them in contact with you.
That would be great. You don't really need to do that, Reed, but when we come to looking at revisions to redevelopment grant programs, down here number 8 and number 10, the project's update, I think maybe rather than wait for the bad news to get to us, we might anticipate that there's going to be a recommendation from the Tree Advisory Board that they need help. And the biggest, as you know, the biggest pocket, the deepest pocket on the beach side is the South Atlantic Main Street Trust Fund, those two trust funds. So
Deep anymore.
when we get to the discussion of programs, I'd like to, if I forget, because I'm older than you are, would you remind me that I'd like to discuss some sort of a fund like that, because this is not the first disease or first episode that we're going to face in the redevelopment area when it comes to the vegetation.
Gary, is that what we see where the trees are, the leaves are all turning brown and such?
Absolutely,
And,
yeah.
well, and I'm seeing it, and I also think, looking at these trees, just noticing the last week or so, I think there's some issues with respect to the trees and the power lines, phone lines, all that kind of stuff too, because we're looking like there's going to be trees falling down with limbs on those and
Yeah.
such, and into the right of ways and everything else. And you know, we can't be sitting there with a beachside that looks like it's, you know, being deforested and dying.
Yeah.
So
And actually, they go from being alive to being dead in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
yeah, it seems like
Totally
it's going
100% 2 weeks.
Yeah. And I'm surprised that the Tree Advisory Board hasn't been on top of this. So, you know, by this stage of the game, this isn't news by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, it's here, and it's affecting the tree cover on the beach side.
Any other board questions or comments for Mike?
I have one. I was at the Santa meeting the other night, and there's a gentleman that is out working on getting people informed on that disease. And I don't remember his name, but I'll try and track it down for you, for whoever wants it. Dan, would you want to have that information, or Gary?
I think Reed's suggestion is a good one. Let's look to the beautification board, if in fact that's, you know, their bailiwick, and see if we could work with them in coming up with something that would be an extend a hand to the commercial and the residential homeowners there, because this is a huge and very expensive project citywide, just on the beach side.
Any other board members?
With the code issue, if it's a dead tree, I will, we write it up and have them remove it. I don't know, maybe you want to add a new tree there, so you have the green, right? Is that what y'all want?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a problem. I mean, the big problem will be people who can't afford $3,000 or $4,000 to take down a 25-foot tall tree. Yeah, it's and plus the wood has to be hauled away. It can't be left out. It has to be, it's full of disease. I mean, and the disease spreads. So I think you're going to have that. You're going to have compliance issues with people who have dead trees, can't afford it. And you're going to have some potential danger issues with limbs falling as the trees get dry and the wind picks up. We're in hurricane season. I think maybe a task force with FP&L, Reed. I mean, this could be a real, come up peninsula from South Daytona and just look and see as you head north what you run into in tree cover.
Yeah. One of the things that you could look at real quick doing, Reed, is eliminating the tree cutting permit. So they don't have to go, if they have a dead tree, boom, they can go cut the thing down, get somebody to cut it if they have the money to do
Yeah,
it.
if it's a dead tree, we don't ask for a permit.
Or you-
Even if it's,
Even if it's price
You
table.
permit for live trees only.
oh,
Oh, okay. It's also affecting avocado trees too, this
Mhm.
disease, yeah. It's gonna wipe out everything on the coast.
They don't have
And
anything to
there's no way
spray
to
on
stop
it.
it either.
way to
No.
stop it.
there was a $500 possible inoculation that the county was offering that they said may or may not work.
Yeah.
They quit offering it very
There's
quickly.
a girl from Gainesville, and actually the person to call would be Mark Bernier, because he's had her on his program before. She's one of those, whatever her name is, and she had quite a bit of information on this thing. It's been around for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Any others? Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
All right, item 6, which was a conditional use for a temporary parking lot, I believe.
Motion to continue to September 14th, 2011 meeting.
Second. Second the motion
Any
to
discussion?
continue.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Continued. Item 7, discussion of the E-Zone Master Plan Amendment Redevelopment Plan. I believe this is you, Reed.
Actually, I'm going to be turning it over to Jason. I'll just go over very quickly. We talked about the schedule and what the timing was for getting the comp plan, the land development code through, and we're gonna take the redevelopment plan in 2 steps. One is what Jason's going to present now, which is going to just be something we need to do as sort of housework to kind of get ready for the change to the land development code and the comprehensive plan. So that we just clear up some of the issues of conflict and compatibility with what the E-zone plan is and get that prepped. Then we will return when we get to more specifics and we all discuss more the changes to the land development code, which is going to be done later by Clarion. It's going to start in the fall and will be finished by the end of the year with that separate process. There's a scope of services they're prepared to do in addition to the overall land development code rewrite. And by the way, Module 2 is something that should be coming out very soon. And when we do have a copy of that, we'll be distributing it to all of you. I hope by the end of the week that will happen. It's a lot of reading and it'll take a lot of time to start digging through that, but that's going to give you a sense of what Clarion is going to be working on as we look at the E-zone land development code rewrites. Because one thing that's going to happen is you're going to have lots of interesting changes with form-based code as opposed to normal code change. So we're going to get that back to you again, hopefully by next week. We're not going to wait for another packet to go out. There's just too much information in there. With that, I want to give Jason the floor and let him kind of walk you through the steps here.
Well, somewhere
Jason?
the slides got lost.
Oh, no. Have you tested this yet?
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll just.
Wing it.
You know what?
You have to do it old school.
Yeah.
Wing it.
I'll wing it. I have a printout here. I'm sorry. I'll just talk you through it. And actually, a lot of what my presentation was going to do is follow what's. If you look at the Main Street plan that was adopted in 2009, and I'm just starting on page. Oops. It must be this. Yeah, starting with if you look at page 9 with the program objectives. Basically, what we're proposing to do in terms of get the E-zone plan adopted, we're going to follow the pattern that we used when the Downtown Redevelopment Board just recently, or in the last year, they adopted the Riverfront Master Plan. And what we did in that process is we basically attached the new plan as an appendix to the existing plan. But in doing that, you have to we have to make sure that all the objectives that are in the plan do not conflict with what you have in the new plan. So we will have to go through a process, and what you'll be seeing next month is a detailed underlying cross-out of the plan to where we're going to have to make some changes. And what I want to do is just kind of walk you through some of the changes we're thinking about, just kind of get the discussion going. And then I think you've had these materials in your packet, if you have certain suggestions where we should be looking to, take notes, and we'll bring that back as part of this plan process. So in starting with the program objectives, and starting if you look at the E-zone on page 15, they have certain overall kind of program objectives, and what we'll have to do is kind of combine them into the objectives that are on page 9.
Excuse me, which
You've
page?
lost us
Oh,
already.
yes, you're right.
Yeah, there's.
Okay, page 15 of the E-zone plan. So you,
But-
E-zone plan,
yeah, take this book,
volume 1.
Volume 1.
volume 1.
I don't see any objectives on that. Cornerstone principles?
Yeah, those-
and,
Is that what you're
Mr.
saying?
Berger, before we begin, I think we're dealing with an irony here, in that for those of us who were at the city commission meeting when the E-zone plan was passed, it wasn't passed, it was, what's the term that was used?
It was accepted.
It was accepted.
It was
Not
approved,
It was a-
which was close to which I'd call an acceptance. We really are not, have not adopted the plan.
Correct.
Okay.
So let's make that clear. It's
Each
not an
member
adopt-
of the commission, as the mayor went around the room, Mrs. White had 10 or 12 items. Mrs. Woods had 10, I think. Each member had a number of questions, either that they felt there was an internal conflict in the plan itself, or the plan called for things that they were not willing to support. And until we know what those are, I think we might be spinning our wheels by incorporating or discussing the E-zone plan and its incorporation in the Main Street plan, other than in the most general terms.
And I think the point right now is to have those general discussions and certainly welcome any of your specifics as well, number one. Number two, I think what we can certainly do is bring back next time specific comments that we can pull out of that. I have to have that discussion in terms of processes, taking all of those minutes that you're talking about and the discussion and comments that people made as they were talking about the plan, because that was
The minutes
some
aren't done
background
yet?
information. There were some comments that were made when we had a community meeting. I mean, I don't have all of that as well, but we did get some comments, and we had a questionnaire, if you recall, if you were at the community meeting on the 27th. We have that information as well. We could and we could show you how that would be addressed and what those comments were at the next meeting. We could.
Well, I
do that.
guess my question is whether or not we should be leading or following. I mean, the elected officials, the city commission, I'm sure has been given the comments from these meetings. They're aware of their constituent, I hope they're aware of their constituent opinions about the plan. They all have reservations, and as you remember, when the vote was moved by the mayor, there were caveats that were in the minds of at least 4 of the commissioners about specific items in the plan. So if you're comfortable that we can move ahead with our ideas, not knowing what the commissioners feel about these issues, that's okay with me.
I
but-
have no problem with you making comments without having all of that, the comments that happened at that commission, and having that discussion and talking about the plan. You've had a chance to look at that plan now, the E-zone plan. And you've had some time to just look at the Main Street plan. And what we wanted tonight to do is just have that discussion with you about some of the things that have to change. So that's pretty general. To adopt this. This is more the mechanics of getting the E-zone plan in, and it's not our intent to in any way start taking on the comments and the criticisms or whatever it might be that we had in that meeting, that first meeting in July, where this was approved. We're going to add all of that information in terms of background along with, and we have not consolidated all those comments from the July meeting. I mean, I do not have them all in one document yet, but we could certainly have that to you as a part of getting into more of the specifics next month.
I'm very comfortable with the commission's position on this. They're our elected officials. They're going to either enforce it or pass it or not.
Sure.
but there are really large issues that are unresolved yet in that plan, like the governance over the E-zone. And from general conversation, I'm not sure the commission supports the consultant's opinion on governance in the E-zone. So there are some other big issues.
That's right. And we're not-
funding.
And I'm going to tell you right now that we're not intending to tackle that as a part of this first phase. I think we should let Jason maybe,
Yeah,
Mr. Chair.
Let's do this.
Go
What
through
I'd like
this.
to see is just a conceptual outline of what
Right.
it is you think this board needs to do.
Mhm.
Okay, and then how you're proposing that, because you're telling us we're going to get a red line or strike through revision to
What you're
the
gonna
plan.
what you're gonna end up with is you take this Main Street plan right here, this document, and at the next meeting you'll have a red line strike through especially when you start with page 9 with the program objectives, and it really carries through through the land use
Okay.
control elements.
And all that, I think it will be good, and that'll give something specifically to look at and compare.
Right.
I will tell you, I will have a serious problem with respect to taking this Main Street plan and attaching as an appendix
Right.
the E-zone and adopting that as part of the plan when the E-zone has really not even been adopted by the city commission and such, and there can be inherent conflicts and such. So I would much prefer to see this plan stand on its own and as revised and its proposed revision, as opposed to simply making changes in here and attaching something else and then having to go through and do some huge comparison and ambiguities and who knows what's going on. I'd like to see it all within the one document. So what I'd like to see is, or here tonight, is conceptually what it is you're proposing, the key areas you're going to be focusing on with respect to the revisions, and we come back next month and look at the specific revisions.
And if I could just add one thing, I know the minutes from the July meeting are not done yet, and actually anyone here can go video stream it and actually listen to the commissioners right to that. But what is a public document available in the city manager's office, and I would hope that staff would possibly mail it to us, because I had asked about this on Saturday, or Commissioner White's. She has 8 pages of comments, and like, for instance, when we're talking about zoning, overlay, straight zoning, just do a straight administrative. So those are things that will impact, I think, it should be part of our discussion to know that. Because you can't, I agree with Dan, you can't just attach that's saying one thing and have a redevelopment plan that says something else, especially about some of these critical, I mean, there are some very critical issues. So,
Right.
and I have some questions when we get to the zoning stuff even, so. But this is available now, and this could actually, since it wasn't here for the rest of the board tonight, it could be mailed to the board, and they could actually have it as they go through this in the next month.
I think, the key thing to keep in mind is we can't mix, we got different processes that we have to do in terms of approving what they want to accomplish in the E-zone. You have the comprehensive plan, which does the broad framework of the policies of the city, which, is required by state law. You then have a detailed redevelopment plan, which tells you how you're going to redevelop the area. And then you have the implementation, which is the zoning. So all these different pieces, they all have to work with each other, but they all have different specific detailed or functions that they serve in terms. And so when it comes to zoning, there's going to be, and I think that's what Reed was saying earlier, there's going to be a zoning overlay that'll be coming forward to you at a later date. But right now, the first step we have to do is adopt the redevelopment plan, or the so-called E-zone, as part of the redevelopment plan.
Well, but I think the point was, we don't have from the city commission clear signal on the nature of the E-zone. I'm not sure you've got the priorities in order. I feel very uncomfortable in moving forward, knowing that every minute of our discussion might be trumped by the commission, because they, as yet, have not decided on funding and governance and a lot of these very big structural issues.
Well, I would go back and say,
help us.
Yeah, I'm hearing that, and I also think that, we are advisory to the elected officials. So if we get any document or work on something, they may not see it. And I know there's comments that have been made there in a public meeting, but and that we should get those minutes and when they're ready and distribute those to you. I absolutely agree with that. But that I would also say that we have a chance to make comments about these documents and how they're done. I heard tonight a suggestion that rather than take the entire document and say, here it is, and we're just attaching it, you want to, we can think about those kinds of things later too. I'm not sure we have to do that. We have to make some reference to real documents, but we don't have to pull the whole thing in at once.
The plan requires certain statutory elements.
That's right.
And those elements
Yeah.
under the statute, which must be addressed, that deal with what's being revised by the proposed E-zone, and we think are conceptually laid out within the E-zone plan, those statutorily required elements should be integrated into the proposed plan in a red line format so we can look at them. Because if we can't put together today, before things get started, what the plan is actually supposed to be, we're gonna have a real problem with it down the road.
Sure.
So what I'd like to see is Jason give us the areas in which you think need to be addressed within the plan. Then when you come back next month, we'll have a red line version.
Right.
We can look at the specifics.
Right.
But my request personally is that let's not be planning on attaching this whole plan. And let's make the plan itself stand on its own.
Okay. So it's in terms of some of the areas that will need to change in the plan.
In the redevelopment plan or
In
the
the
E-zone
redevelopment
plan?
The redevelopment plan. Basically, the way I approached this was, again, there was the vote. They accepted the plan. I understand there were comments and stuff. So basically, what do we have to do to get the redevelopment plan, where there's any conflicts with the redevelopment plan with the proposed E-zone? And then in terms of that process of amending the plan, we can debate, and you can make your recommendations to the city commission, or you're making your recommendations to the city commission acting as the CRA. In terms of the redevelopment plan. So conceptually, there's certain on page, I don't want to lose, but when I was referencing, I think I was starting to reference page 15 of the E-zone. It starts off kind of with some general, if you look at the bottom, provide unique offering, and there's some kind of guiding principles there, bullet points. Some of those just general guiding principles would be pulled into as general objectives of what we're trying to achieve in the redevelopment area.
I have real problems with this process. It's just not a rational process. I would rather the staff come back with revisions to the Main Street redevelopment area plan that are general enough that we don't have to get into specific language in a plan that the commission has not signed off on. Even some of those, what you might say are mission statements or cornerstone principles. One of the cornerstone principle is an independent governing authority in the E-zone, which is not the city commission. That's one of the principles that is not yet, I haven't run into one commissioner yet who is 100% in favor of the governance issue. The funding is another critical issue. So I would feel more comfortable, Reed, if we could amend the Main Street redevelopment area plan with language that is general enough that it can accept the elements when the city decides what they are in the E-zone plan, but doesn't create a Frankenstein monster by trying to move the brain of one plan into the body of another.
I think we're on the same page, Jason, with this, and let make it clear, this is not easy to do this. But this is about trying to make it easy enough in the beginning, and why I said it's a two-step process. It's to do those very general things and address what's in the plan that is not going to be those issues that might be controversial, need a lot of vetting before we get there. The land development code, the comprehensive plan, aren't going to be getting into some of those issues that are cornerstone. There's a lot of things in here that are policy, that are...
And that's why we need you to come
Right.
forward with a plan.
Right.
What you think is appropriate
Right.
pursuant to the statute.
Right.
We look at it, we give our comments, it then goes on to the CRA and that at the city commission, and they can look at our thoughts on it with the amended plan, and we go forward. But that's how I think we start to integrate the adoption of what is acceptable to everybody under some of the concepts within the E-zone. But that's why I think we need to not have the E-zone plan attached, we need to just make this redevelopment plan as amended stand on its own.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jason, let's go through the areas conceptually here
Right.
quickly. I don't think we need to get into all
Right.
the details.
Right.
Right.
Let me just tell you, so some of the guiding principles I felt that are left out in the general, on page 9 of the existing redevelopment plan, that are kind of missing that we might have to add in. Providing incentives for the development of a walkable retail entertainment area that creates a first-class tourist environment. You know, when you look at the E-zone, there's a lot of talk of that. Our current plan doesn't seem to really focus on it. I think we need to put some more emphasis on it, because I think with the E-zone, there's a lot of emphasis on creating that walkable area. And I think, you know, we'd want to put some stronger language in the redevelopment plan about that.
I don't think it says providing incentives. See, that to me right
Yeah.
there, you've gone into a whole other
Yeah, yeah.
direction.
Ding,
Incentives,
ding,
we're talking money, funding.
Well, but again,
The featuring, if we're talking general objectives, which is right now, page 9 of the redevelopment, general redevelopment objectives. The very first one, feature the beach, augment with a comfortable, walkable, sustaining inland environment, tell the whole story from the beach to the river, from the E-zone plan on page 15. That is a very general statement. To change that and say, provide incentives now is one of our, that's a policy statement on how they might want to do that as a commission. We're now advising them to come up with some kind of program. They're saying this is just should be a general statement.
Here's another
Incentives
suggestion
is
I would have,
money.
Jason, as you go through this process, I think you're the designee for the drafting.
seems
I
like
don't mean to be
is
difficult, but
when you make a revision in the redevelopment plan that you believe coincides to something in this E-zone plan, I would ask that you, in parentheses or footnoting or something, cite the page and location
That would be
from the
perfect.
E-zone plan
Correct.
where you're getting that
that would be
Right.
perfect.
revision from.
Right.
Okay?
Thank you.
So when we go through, we can look real quickly
Thank you.
and make sure
Yeah.
that it's consistent, and then the city commission or CRA can do the same thing.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
and the final plan need not have those references.
Right,
but
this is
for
just us.
discussion.
That would be very
like a
helpful.
footnotes that you would do in a
Yes,
document.
exactly.
Yes, thank you.
when
Exactly.
you see,
Yeah.
we can do
Okay.
that.
Okay?
That's not a problem.
All right,
And,
no more
and I
interruption.
think what again, that's just, you know, it's about wordsmithing too. It's, you know, I note your comments on that.
Okay.
Again, try to market and promote the Main Street area as a premier tourist destination through promoting area destinations and appropriate events. And, you know, there's a lot. And when I'm talking about, it's not just the stuff on page 15, but it's just what carries throughout that document.
Well, if you find incentives somewhere else in the E-zone plan, then you can,
Yeah.
and you want to add that up front.
Yeah.
If you give us the footnote or the
Right.
designation, then nobody is going to yell tilt. You know, they'll all know where you're going with it.
Right. In terms of just flipping the page to land use objectives, in
Which
looking, this is
page?
page 10.
Redevelopment, okay.
I'm in the redevelopment plan. This section, this objective, and you know, none of our other redevelopment plans do this, where there are specific references. This was very odd to me, is that we're referring to specific zoning districts when the zoning districts follow the plan. So it's kind of putting it in the reverse order. So I think what you're going to see are a lot of revisions where these specific, I think some of these bullets or these objectives are still consistent with what we want to achieve,
Yeah.
but the way they're worded and tying back to specific zoning codes is
okay.
probably not what we want to do. And so you'll see some edits and changes to that. What you'll probably see again, I'm pulling up more references to creating the walkable entertainment and retail district, especially in our land use objectives, and it might be specific to what they're trying to create along Main Street. And then another objective that doesn't appear to be really worded in or provided in our existing plan. The E-zone talks a lot about creating objective to develop upper level residential units on Main Street. So there'll probably be objective for that, a policy for that. Transportation objectives. Again, objectives generally, especially since now we have a E-zone document that's very specific about number of spaces we need to develop in terms of square footage, if it's buildings or if it's how many rooms we need to put in. You'll probably see some objectives in terms of being more specific about what is that quantity we're trying to achieve. They did a lot of analytical work to get to those numbers in terms of creating the plan. So in transportation objectives, which I'm on page 11, under the transportation and parking objectives, you'll just probably see a more specific objective about parking garages and how many spaces we need to achieve in the E-zone.
Well, let me ask a question, Carrie. With respect to the statute, I believe it outlines what's required in the redevelopment plan and such. It'd be my suggestion that we look at the statute and use it as, make sure we're following that as the framework and don't go too far beyond it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Don't try to put too much in this if it's not required by the statute for the redevelopment plan.
Isn't part of the problem though, if it's not in the plan, you can't actually do
Right.
it?
Correct.
So.
Okay. Well, or maybe, and that's fine, but
Yeah.
I don't want you to go further than you need to go.
Right.
Okay?
That's always the trick in redevelopment. I've dealt with doing these plans in other jurisdictions, other states, and they might have different enabling legislation, but the trick is always having enough being specific enough to have a very clear direction what you're trying to achieve, but being flexible enough when something 2 years down the road comes
Right.
up as you're doing that kind of development. It's a balancing act, but.
Okay.
Can we amend this plan? I mean, this plan can be amended on a regular basis. There's no restriction, right? So, I
Right.
mean, if we forget something,
You can always amend it, but
we
it's
can always amend it. It's when you put something in it anticipating
Yeah.
something that's going to happen and it doesn't happen, that's when you start running into problems, because then the plan becomes a fiction and it's not based
True.
on fact.
And that's another challenge. You don't want an unrealistic plan either. In terms of, I don't believe there's much changes to the design objectives. I think we're still trying to create we want to rehab the commercial structures. We want to upgrade our standards. So a lot of that is still pretty much the same of what we're trying to achieve. Under the parks and recreation objectives, this is where the E-zone talks about the creation of the beach town square. So there'll be some specific objectives about that. Probably add an objective about the expanding the pier, which is in the plan, and then also the marina that's talked about on the Halifax River.
Are you including as the beach town square? I can't remember. Is that the whole band shell area as well? I thought, is that separate? Because this really hit all of those: the band shell, the clock tower restoration, the Main Street pier, the Coquina Arch.
The existing objective take more with the oceanfront park, but now there's this whole concept of what they want to do.
Right.
That
Whole open area.
Yeah.
Okay.
So either that needs to be added into that existing objective, or it might be a new separate one. So we'll
Okay.
just see how it looks on the objectives. And then another section we will be adding. This is an objective we have actually in our other redevelopment plans. We have a section on an economic objectives section. So we'll be adding that with some certain objectives in terms of, and again, this gets to our grants and incentives
Right.
that we provide to achieve what we want to achieve in the plan. So that's where you'll see some of those objectives. And then under the land use controls, which start on page 12, that will probably be mostly, it looks, right now I'm looking at, possibly it's going to be this is going to be like totally overhauled to be more consistent with our current comp plan in the Main Street. If you look at our comp plan, this is very interesting. When I started I guess it's not every day I pick this up and I'm looking at it, but you look at our downtown plan. The downtown plan, when you get to the land use and development control section, mirrors exactly what's in the comp plan. This,
Nothing like it.
it's totally different. So this is going to have to be overhauled to be consistent with the comp plan. Plus, the comp plan itself might need to be changed to some extent to achieve what's being proposed in the E-zone. So, I would just be ready for an expectation that this is going to be, and, Reed gave you what's in the comp plan now. So basically, as a starting point, what's in this is going to be plugged into this section. So, and that might just be that's a total delete and add. I'm probably not even going to waste the paper on a cross out. So just be ready for that one. And basically that was my presentation, just of kind of the direction we're heading. It is more, when I got into it, there's to get the E-zone to conform with the plan, it is going to be quite a bit of a lot of red ink.
And I could anticipate that this won't be done until perhaps last moment or something, but I would anticipate
I'm working
get
on
this in stages, okay? If you get through a section of this and you can give it to us, before you're ready with everything else, if you get through part of it and you think it's ready to pass on, and maybe we could deal with that on an interim basis, that way we wouldn't have to deal with the whole thing in one meeting. Because, that this could go on for a couple, 3 meetings easily, I think, and such, so.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Would it be possible for the staff to determine through the manager which parts of this plan are non-controversial? And let's get them out of the way, because there are only a few here where the pedal hits the metal, and where we're going to have, I think, where we owe it to the commission to give them our best advice, even though we feel they have their own opinion on it. This would be an informed opinion from our perspective. I'd rather spend most of my time on the tough ones and get the easy ones off the table, because I think many of them are with slight modifications. And can't the manager give us the green light on those issues? I think he's very attuned to how this whole thing is happening.
Yeah, and I would tell you that we have kind of outlined some of those already, that are the ones that are less in our domain and more of a CRA policy issue that we could certainly discuss, but it's not what we're going to be dealing with in the revision to this particular plan. So.
Oh, okay.
I could see several of those issues not even being before us with this revision.
Right.
If you're going to institute the recommendations in the E-zone, then you would have to come back to the Main Street plan and amend it again. For example, if you have a different authority controlling both money and policy, then so you don't want us to anticipate that. We'll just do what we can.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's for another time, and how that is established and where it gets placed is, as an organization, I think a good example is with our downtown plan. We have a Main Street organization, and there's some references in there right now.
Let me just, for the sake of ending my comments here, there's a major difference in policy if you have an elected CRA as city commissioners. Then you have an appointed, a self-perpetuating E-zone CRA board, as is suggested by the consultant. And the political nature, the difference in the two boards, sets up an awful lot of the policy that they're capable of doing, because the consultant is suggesting that the city consider removing politics and elected officials from the governance in an E-zone board. So to me, you can wait for the big question, and that's the big question, the money and how it is operated and run and controlled. But I think that affects everything in the plan.
Well, it's an organizational management issue. That's in there, and certainly it has a lot of impact down the road about implementation. as who does it and how do they get it done. I would tell you that what the consultant's trying to do is not in any way replace anybody, but to create a body that would have some autonomous decision-making on for certain reasons. And again, I think that at this point goes beyond the scope of what we need to get into right now.
And I suspect that it may legally go beyond the scope of what the Main Street Redevelopment Board could be dealing with anyway.
That's correct.
Any other board members have any questions for Jason?
I have
Or comments?
just some comments. I just want to make sure, so the things that are in the redevelopment plan that have to do with financing, program management and administration, implementation, those things we're not even going to be looking at this time, at any time, ever?
No.
Okay.
There may be reasons. Like I was just mentioning, there may be a reason because some financing, in the economic development section, there's going to be some crossover. It's probably not going to be that specific, but in some of our other redevelopment plans, we get specific about TIF financing, and so.
Well, and there are some specific things in the E-zone, so that's what, I mean, I'm just saying, I even thinking about this, I definitely agree with, I am not in favor at all of just attaching this with those kinds of things in the E-zone, because it's that. And then I do have a question. And I know this gets into a whole other zoning, and you have form-based guidelines and all that kind of stuff, but the consultants have been talking about an overlay zoning and doing some kind of incentives to get people when they do something new to come up to it. I would really, and I don't expect you guys to have the answer tonight, but I would really like to know that there is some serious staff discussion, anyone and everyone involved, rather than just creating an overlay zoning, why we would not just be doing an administrative rezoning for the area. Start it off and just do it right. And I would like to know the pros and cons of that, because it is something that I think as this goes forward, that's something the board would be interested in. I think one would make it work better and faster and more equitably than the other. That's just my opinion at the beginning without hearing it. But I would like to hear from staff, because I do think that that's a critical issue, and you're talking about.
It's a political issue, though, Tracy. See, it's a very.
It's still one that that's still one that a recommendation from an advisory board.
Might help.
Yes. Because it's one that actually is in Commissioner White's comments.
I know.
Yes, and so I would like us to, when we need to, I would like to have that discussion.
Anyone else?
Very
Thank you, Jason. Moving on to item 8, the revisions to the redevelopment grant programs. Who's handling that, Reed?
And is Jason.
That's me and my
He's a
slides.
workhorse.
So I'm gonna wing this one. Well, really, what I was going to talk about, and it's basically what's in the first page in the memo. So I don't, if you have any questions, but basically what we're facing in the redevelopment areas, the revenues are falling. We're going to have less monies available for grants. In 2009, the CRA adopted some new incentive programs in the redevelopment areas, and I think just for the benefit of, I know we have some new members of the board, when those were crafted, it was really done. A lot of the work was done with a task force in the downtown redevelopment area, and they've worked very well in the downtown area. In the other redevelopments, such as Main Street, in terms of the new ones that we adopted, and they're all listed here on page 2, starting with the third bullet. Those are all the new programs that we've.
Page 2 of what, Jason?
The page 2 of the memo for agenda item 8. If you have this memo, and if you look at page 2, the commercial facade grant and the residential grant were Those were our existing grant programs that we've had for many years. The residential program provides up to $5,000 for improvements to any residential structure in the redevelopment areas. And then the commercial facade provides $5,000, so if they have multiple storefronts, up to $10,000. Then what happened in 2009 is we adopted some new programs specifically tied to incentivizing business attraction to our redevelopment areas. And it really started with some efforts in the downtown area. So, and I think, it was known as we went through this process that that's kind of how they came about, and they were developed in the downtown area, and then we looked at how we could apply them in our other redevelopment areas. What we expect now is, now that we have the E-zone is out there and, that planning process coming to a completion, one of the things we're proposing to do is to better tie those existing programs, especially the business facade, the leasehold improvement grant, and the lease subsidy. Now, the lease subsidy program is not currently
funded.
It's not currently provided over in the Main Street area. With the adoption, the changes we're doing to the Main Street plan is an opportunity to bring that now into the Main Street area, and again tie these to trying to attract the specific businesses that the E-zone outlines in terms of what we should be attracting to the Main Street area. So that's one of the changes you see proposed in the memo, is to really get more specific in terms of the businesses that we're trying to attract in the Main Street area, so we can leverage more success with what grant funds that we have available. In terms of the commercial facade grant program, we have run into some problems. Just some issues where a lot of the grants that we are providing are for mechanical improvements and for roofs. And I know it helps the business owners, but at the same time, we're not getting the visual impact that we really should be trying to leverage and achieve with our commercial facade grants. So one of the proposals that we will be providing to you is is to limit the commercial facade grant to exterior improvements. And especially this will work now because we have those other programs like the leasehold improvement that can do the interior projects. The residential facade grant program, we're looking to tie it directly to homesteaded houses, again, with the limited funds to really encourage. There's been a lot of efforts, I think, at the city commission level, wanting to encourage residential, homesteaded residential in our city, and so that's really focused that program on the homesteaded residential. We also want to provide benefits to those, and I think this is an issue that's been raised at this board. It's really, I think, an issue for the Main Street area more than it's some of our other redevelopment, but is what can we do to encourage the conversion of those multifamily structures back to single family, and or getting the non-homesteaded homes to become homesteaded owned. So we have an incentive program for that.
Quick, would we be doing that when it says to convert to a single family homeowner property? Are we doing this to someone who is buying it saying that they are the homeowner, homesteaded property,
right,
and they want to convert it? We're not doing it so someone can buy it, fix it up, and sell it to someone else. We're not helping.
Flipping.
Yes.
This would be a person coming in saying, I just bought this property, we're going to live in it.
Okay. Just wanted to be really clear on that.
Yeah, but it's a good point, because I think when you're going to work on giving funding for some kind of homestead, there has to be some provision in there that it doesn't turn over.
Yeah.
And you're getting some permanency there.
Because we have some of these others, like I think I saw in the back when I was reading through this, like a minimum 2-year lease, we need to ensure that these are the homeowners.
Right.
They're not just
a typical 5-year requirement is generally, and it's transferable for home ownership.
Okay.
But you can't get back to a non-homesteaded.
Exactly.
Right.
Really nail that down.
Would you want to keep out someone who's willing to come in and buy 10
I
rental
sure
properties
would.
and convert them to single-family homes and resell them?
Yes,
You'd
I
be
would.
against that?
I want the person living there now. That's someone who is making a commitment to the area, and that has been the problem, people buying, and there's been a history of them not living up to what they say. You know, it's.
Well, that's a different issue, and I agree with you there.
But
There's been a problem.
I don't think we should be. I don't think we should be using money to do someone who's just going to come in and flip. It should be the homeowner. This is about the single-family homeowner.
Well,
That was basically it. All my,
Can I,
I think the last bullet point, if you just look at the memo, talks about us only allowing taxable commercial properties
Yeah.
to be benefit from these programs.
Information tonight.
This again is discussion. I guess there's any, some of the discussion we just had here is helpful to make sure we go back. Actually, the detailed programs is pretty much ready to get out to you, so we can get out to you as soon as make a few revisions based on the comments. But if you got any issues with or concerns about the direction we're going, this is a good time to let us know, because we're again doing the underlying changes to
We'll open the board comments in 1 second. My suggestion would be, when you come back with the specifics, is you have these number of grants. I'd like to see what the past track record has been
Exactly.
relative to funding. A little spreadsheet showing, what's been happening with these.
Right.
Okay, what dollars are we even talking about realistically? What was available? What is available? Okay, and if there's some proposed allocation relative to these amongst the various grant programs, I think we need to see that. And then also what impact you think that these proposed revisions would make. I'd like to see all that before I can make a decision as to whether or not we approve a change or just get rid of some programs. Are we funding them or not, and to what extent, and such. So.
yeah, I think the one thing that this report is lacking is some performance vectors. We don't know. I don't even know how much you have budgeted for it. That isn't on any of the documents that I have. So I'd like the overlay, as the chairman suggests. I'd also like to know, in the Main Street South Atlantic redevelopment zone, where the money comes from and where the money has gone in the grant program. Something tells me that, and I don't know whether or not you do questionnaires of both residential and businesses who are paying into the trust fund, but something tells me that these programs, because you don't give us the number of grants given and the amount of money, they're not performing as well perhaps as they could. And I spend a lot of time in the Main Street redevelopment area, know a lot of businesses there, and I'm not sure that most of them are totally unfamiliar with the grant program because it's not responsive to their needs. Now that's not true on Main Street. Main Street itself, I think we've been very responsive to merchants' suggestions and needs on Main Street, but I think much less so in other parts of the redevelopment zone, and residents are paying into the trust fund just as businesses are. I'm glad we're doing an ISB corridor program because the businesses on International Speedway Boulevard, and many of them pay large dollars into the trust fund, really have been, from their perspective, not invited to participate to the degree they would like. You're right, we don't have programs in the Main Street redevelopment area that mirror what we have downtown on Beach Street yet. And I hope we will get to that point. I'm wondering, when I compare our programs with other cities with dynamic redevelopment grant programs, I'm wondering why we've come up with these. Who are these responding to? And why aren't we doing commercial, business, and residential-based grant programs, responding to what they perceive to be their needs? I'm just puzzled. It seems like this is a superimposed grant program onto a population of people, and because it's not really performing really well, all you have to do is drive around to see.
Well,
there might be other programs that we could look at. We're not reinventing the wheel. There are all kinds of models out there. It's your business, Share with me, help me, why we
I guess
why we keep
something
beating this
I
horse.
didn't mention, and when we developed these programs in 2009,
Mm-hmm.
this was done based on exhaustive research of what is occurring in other communities. Matter of fact, the lease subsidy program, something is being done in came from Delray Beach, and there's a few other. Well, really, Delray Beach is the source of it, and the other communities have copied there. So I mean, it came out of exhaustive research of what CRAs of our size are doing throughout state of Florida, and some even larger, and then also what some of our local, what DeLand's doing, what Ormond Beach is doing.
Are they
And
working?
well,
that's
actually-
the question. Are they working?
Well, I guess we used all the money up. So
And I was to say, that you're sort of coming late to the board. We were given all of that and had discussions on that, and the ones in that we liked and what we'd like to see here based on what did work. But I mean, we gosh, the packet I think was like that, just of grants, what works, what's elsewhere. Yeah.
But I think the question you had was, is it working? There's a couple measures. One is, does anybody know about it? And that I think our marketing efforts work too well, because we went through the money so quickly in the program, both residential and commercial in Main Street, that we were essentially out of money by about February, March.
What percentage of the total budget for the Main Street redevelopment area is set aside for grants in that area, and what percentage in the South Atlantic?
Mr. Libby, I can't tell you what that percentage is, but certainly we can give you that information. And for those of you who do not know, that South Atlantic not only has no funding, it's about roughly $10 million in taxable value underneath the base value that was created in 2001.
But they're still paying into the trust fund.
No,
No.
they're
They're not
not.
paying into the trust fund?
There's no money.
No increment.
No increment in South Atlantic.
Right. So that spike is gone. That the county didn't feel that up and that down there above the base. Now they're starting to feel that first 10 million of that portion of South Atlantic. So that's no different than some of the others that started late, like Daytona Shores, and so we're now experiencing it. The good news is we didn't have any indebtedness or something else that would have had to carry over to the city itself. So that's the good news. Main Street, I think you're going to see that just broadly, just so you know, we are scraping bottom there. Once you take debt and some of the other costs that we've had, and we've been slashing dollars out of the operational side of the budget, and essentially having nothing left but spending down the capital. And as you know, we had a reserve there about 3 or 4 years ago, and we have cut right through that to where we're going to get the pier, the parking, and those core projects done, and that's it. And then you're back to cash flow and trying to rebuild up and make something happen. So there's some interesting challenges ahead. And if you haven't,
maybe a brief financial statement that attached to this would give the full picture.
I can do that. I made a presentation to the county council, I think last Thursday, and gave some of that information to them, and certainly I could give that to you.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I just was going to say that, being where we are in A1A and in the South Atlantic area, I know that South Atlantic, they have no money because nobody's paying in, because everything's half the value of what it was in 2009. On A1A, though, many people have taken advantage of it. Like Reed said, we ran out of money there. But the problem is a lot of people want to use that grant money, but they've got to spend money that they don't have for matching funds. So people want to participate in the program, but you've got to spend money out of your pocket to get into it. And unfortunately, economic times they are, people are holding on to their cash right now. So, but I mean, I think the programs work well. Like I said, ran out of money, and I know we've talked for our South Atlantic project to go there. You just bite the bullet and do stuff yourself. So, but I think the programs are working. The only thing we might want to think about is, if funds are decreased now, instead of saying, okay, we're gonna go to $10,000, maybe we say $8,000 and start scaling it back a little bit, maybe spread it around, less money to more people instead of a larger figure to, less people.
I think that's why we need to see the dollars.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Yes, I had a few. Dan,
Oh.
I had a few. That's all right.
You already spoke one. Go ahead,
Not about
Tracy.
the specifics.
Okay.
A couple of things. The historic preservation, when I look in here and what it's eligible for, I personally, when we're looking at dollars, I'd like to know what it actually costs to get someone on the local historic district. That's our own one, because I think if you're looking at up to no single grant exceeding 15,000, I think actually helping someone go from just being a regular residence to actually a historic residence in this area, because it was certainly also pointed out in the E-zone how historic this area is. If part of the grant eligibility of that grant funding is to make someone or to have them do a matching grant so they can become a local historic designated.
Well, I think the expectation, the Historic Preservation Board is working on the Surfside neighborhood.
Okay.
And they're working on the bound. So what you're going to end up in the Main Street area is you're going to have that historic district adopted. So that's where that would become somebody.
Well,
would,
if we do, only half of Seabreeze was adopted, so
Right.
never count out
I-
what happens up here the first and third Wednesdays. Never count that out. So just given that, just something to keep in mind. It may be too soon, and it could come out, but I do think
But
that's
I think when it comes to
important.
residential, the historic district is probably going to be the best way.
I agree. If the whole thing becomes a local designated, that would take
It's
care
going to
of
be very
it.
difficult for somebody individually to get designated. I mean, it's
Well,
easier.
they're national, but it's the local. So I was just curious as to what's involved locally. What I think you just, well, I don't know, but I would just be curious as to what
You
it
can get
is
that
and what it costs.
They'd have to go.
If they come to the planning board,
They
I
have to go the
imagine.
whole
So that
process.
would just be helpful. And then I had a question, and it's sort of going to what Tim was just saying about maybe downsizing some of the money things, but the redevelopment residential grant program is a one-time, I guess, for the life of the property, but the commercial grant program we just do over and over and over again?
Actually, that's going to be a change that you'll be seeing.
Thank you. That would be very,
I'm
yes.
sorry. That's something I think after the memo we've gone through and
Okay.
that's some of the other little tweaks.
Okay,
that you'll be
because that
seeing.
should be tweaked. Okay.
Yeah.
Those are my comments, Dan.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you, Jason. Item 9, ISB streetscape update. That you read?
Yes. There's not a lot to report. There's a lot of discussion going on right now. As we start nearing September, we'll have a newsletter out for both the downtown and the beach side of the ISP corridor, and we will hopefully have the kind of information in there to set the table, let people know that we're going to be going through a concept plan in the month of September. We're still trying to work out some schedules with our meetings we're having with Department of Transportation. The engineers are going back and forth. It's giving me a headache listening to all of the things that they're talking about. When you're trying to work with a state road, this is not easy. And the state has recently changed a number of its policies and programs, and it's just trying to make sure that we have a meeting of the minds, and that design is not getting ahead of what the realities are of today's policies for the state and engineering, what we do on the road. And specifically, I think the main thing is if you start talking about putting landscape medians in.
Mm-hmm.
And we certainly wanted to, and we talked about it at this board, to try to do some of that so that you can have a grander entrance. Like if you're going to Palm Beach, you come across that bridge and boom, you You just get that wow factor, and it's a beautiful, beautiful boulevard taking you to the beach. So, our prime mission is to get, like it says in our plan, get those overhead lines down underground. So between surveying it, making sure we know everything that's under the ground as we're trying to do the design, hopefully by September we'll have that meeting. That's all I have right now.
We can do something about those atrocious banner holders that are on the bridge.
You mean the ones that have the ties and the duct tape? And
Yeah.
we're working on that independently of that whole thing,
Yeah, but
because
it just looks, they always
tacky.
put new banners up and they last about 24 hours and it looks like.
Yeah. Our intent is to come back with something that's more permanent and not so you have these bare branches all the time, because that, so we have some permanency, and we can come back and take you as a visitor all the way from the interstate all the way to the beach, number one. And number two, have some alternating opportunities to tell you what district you're in, where you're at as you come through our community, so that Midtown and Downtown and Main Street South Atlantic are telling you that you're in a somewhat different place, but you're still on ISB as you're coming in. So we're going through that now. We're meeting with wayfinding folks, and I'm anticipating an RFQ or RFP or something like that. That'll be, obviously we'll coordinate with, but that's separate from this ISB streetscape project. Just, if I could, move on.
Is this the redevelopment project?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Just, I think I can be pretty quick. Could you put that on the screen, please, because I didn't bring my notes with me on this. Thank you. 14 South Grandview Avenue, finally, after bidding, rebidding, and getting the environmentals done, we have an opportunity to take down a historic house, not because we want to, but because it's in such bad shape. We've actually taken a number of people through it that had some concerns. Once they went through it, they understood this is one of those that was long gone, and we had to pull it down. This building, whoops, we lost it.
That building?
Okay, that's all right. I don't know what happened.
That's structured.
This is so, the other thing that about this is we do want to come back to you with a site plan for a green parking lot. We still need as much public parking as we can get in the area, and so we intend to come back with a proposal for you to look at, and then hopefully we can move forward with a plan. We'll have to do a public use permit for that, but I think that's going to be something that will be temporary, because if we follow the E-zone plan for what we had intended, we would actually be putting some cottage housing back in its place in the future. The ISB property improvements, that's where we're talking about actually taking down the buildings now that are on ISB. We've actually tried to fix them up enough so that we felt somewhat good about what we had purchased. But it's time now to take and level those down and get on with the business of trying to attract redevelopment to the area. We'll be in 2 weeks. Down at the bottom there, you see the state conference for the shopping centers. We'll be going to that in a couple of weeks. And this will be one of those sites that we're going to be talking about with the development community, which will be there in the Orlando area.
Acreage is there? Square footage of acreage?
Well, it's a range, because it's what we own is under just under 2 acres. What we potentially have in terms of assembly is almost 2.5 acres in that area. It's all, the underlying land use is commercial retail. But there would have to be, some rezoning in that area. But we've had some interest by developers, but some of that has dried up right now, and so we have to get it assertive and go out there and look for some opportunities. So we're going to test it out in August this month. And design standards, I think one of the questions was, can we discuss colors? And we had some internal discussions about, when and how can we start bringing that up. Well, we got to bring back the design standards again. And Jason, you're here. Jason knows it's something he's been helping us with. And he's working with a new gentleman that we have on staff in planning as well. That's just gone through some of the architectural standards and has some of that background. And so Tom.
Yeah. Okay.
And Tom Wittenauer, I think, is going to add a new dimension to our capability to address this in house. And in fact, I think when it comes to the things we do with the E-zone, the land development code rewrite, I think we're going to get have some advantages with someone of his talents as we move forward. And then I think the last thing I heard last month was on the pier and the pier update, and you wanted the exact financials of everything. I don't have that. I would say that the number keeps seeming to move. There are, as you know, negotiations. I think there's only one way, and that's up right now, and there's a ceiling. So.
Oh, we can always move the ceiling, right?
Yeah. Well. What I'm saying is the number one priority for us is to get the pier up and open and do it right. Did I mention that we were going to open that pier? Okay, I think I did. Well, guess what? We're not going to open it right now. That's the latest I've heard, and one of the reasons for that, so you all know, is I think the discussions, that negotiations are going on, would suggest that there may be some activity out on the pier sooner than later, and that just opening it and then closing again for the construction, let's not do it. So that's that. So you know the background. That's where it's coming from, so let's keep our fingers crossed. Everything works out. That we have a pier open and a restaurant in there, and we go to work.
Is there a ballpark figure?
No.
I wasn't given one, and I don't have one.
So do we know what we've spent to date? We don't know what we have spent to date.
It's all I know is the last number that we were working with was $4.5 million.
Okay.
Okay.
That gives me a ballpark. Thank you.
It was, originally
Less
it
than
was
$1
$3
billion.
million, and we were at 4.5, and I know that some of the work that's out there is going to take us north of 4.5.
Well, I know
Oh,
there,
yeah.
but I mean,
Okay.
I'm just, where are we so far?
We gotta be already out of pocket
So we're okay. Again, I think we're being cautious, but we did just buy the second piece of the Breakers park expansion. There's 3 lots we wanted to acquire. What's left now is right next to Breakers. It's the hotel there, in the Saxon, and that one is in its final negotiations, and so we hope to come back with some news on that. There's some legal issues that the bank has to deal with, and then we'll get there.
What did they pay for the Sunshine property, which is what you just bought?
The one we just bought, that was, I believe, $860,000 was the purchase price. We have to pay a 4.5% assignment cost for that in addition. So we were somewhere just above $900,000 when all is said and done.
You got a good buy.
Yeah, the appraisals, we were under the appraisals, so.
Because there was 150 foot of frontage and that wraps around there on Main Street.
Right.
No Harvey. And it was 150 foot versus 50 for the old Saxony, which
Well,
is immediately north of it.
Right. We had $3.5 million that we were up to that we could use for the beginning the negotiation. Know that we could start pushing forward, and right now we spent close to about $1.5 million on the two pieces. So, not that we're going to spend the rest on this. We think that this will hopefully come in, where we'll have some significant dollars that we can then use in other ways. For the park.
More money from the ECHO for the park?
Sure.
They apply
Sure.
for it?
No, in fact, I think we're looking at this as a phased process. The first process is to look at whether or not we should utilize that property for parking first, and then execute the expansion of the park when we're ready to commit to the entire square concept. Because if you look at that, what we have now in the current park and what we're looking at in expansion, we need to work with the state and everyone involved in the grant to redesign that. So it's going to take cooperation with a lot of people to get
As a matter
that
of
done.
fact, parking is now a priority under the ECHO program,
That's right.
off-beach parking. So
That's
it would
correct.
be easier to leverage the dollars for parking than it would be. And they'll pay more than a match.
Right.
So, it might be something to really look into.
And
We could get an ECHO grant for parking too then?
Parking, off-beach parking is a new $20 million priority.
That is on beach parking, isn't it?
No, you can't.
No, off-beach parking.
I was thinking of on beach, it's adjoining right to the beach.
Doesn't matter.
That makes no difference. Makes no difference. Yeah. Yeah, makes no difference. And I know Reed is aware of that. We've discussed that.
yeah, I think the issues will be how temporary is temporary and
Right.
what are you doing with it, and we just have to
Well,
work through that.
Actually, temporary is no more than 6 years according to our land development code.
Very good.
So that answers that.
And the restrictive covenant's 20 years, so,
It's-
ECHO would be, you'd wind up giving some of
Well,
the
the
money
new
back
ones
if
now,
the use
whatever is
changed.
there can't go longer than 6 more years.
Yeah.
Dave, did you have?
Yeah, just back to the pier. Gary, Mr. Libby asked earlier for a financial, basically, of where all the money went from the Main Street CRA. Earlier tonight, he was talking about that, asking for next month. Can we attach to that an update on the pier? And the reason people are asking me constantly, how much have we spent on the pier? You've sat on that board, you sit on the board, well, how come you don't know? How come the board doesn't know? And, you hear figures from $3 million, which we know is low, up to $8, $9, $10 million. And so that's all. That's the reason I ask, because I
Sure.
would
Well-
like to know what the taxpayers of Daytona Beach have spent on the pier.
Okay, I appreciate that, but I keep having to come back that's not what this board is about, is getting into the financing and the budget. I know we all want to understand it, and it's there in public documents, but, we're primarily here to deal with the site plan and the conditional use approvals and
But we had
those
no
things
problem
which.
spending money for different things on Main Street in the past years when it came to the money of the CR.
Sure.
It's not that we're getting into the financing, we just would like to know for
Right,
information.
right. Yeah. Well, when I have some information that I get that I can share with you, I will certainly be glad to do that.
Either that or you just have to do a public information.
Yeah.
Public records request.
It's easier if I get it, but
Apparently not.
no, it's because it's a movie, because there's a lot in motion right now. So I got right now, I can look at my own records and see I'm about $4.5 million.
Thank you, Reed.
Welcome.
Any last comments or questions for Reed before public comments? Tim?
Reed, we keep throwing out about the square, the public square thing. When's going to be the right time to ask, what are going to be the mechanism and the tools that we're going to use to try to acquire this property, and how we're going to acquire, because most of that property there is privately
It's all privately owned.
Yeah, no, it's privately owned property. We don't have a lot of cash. I don't think we can use eminent domain. How do we plan on assembling all that property?
We don't use the E word, number one. We look in the future right now, unless some of the efforts that are ongoing to go after grants. Some of the, the federal, the state, where it seems that there's some money squirreled away somewhere.
Yeah.
But it's, I know, everything you read in the newspaper, and yet, there is always something. So you'd never leave that stone unturned. But the other piece that's always been there for us is what we do in the sweat equity to work with private investors who believe in the plan, want to commit to the plan, and partner with us, and so that we can leverage what that development is and what capital will be returned to us, revenue stream, and share in that. And so some shared revenue has typically been the way to make projects work, particularly in the beginning of any tax increment finance district. It's not about having the cash lying around to do your public projects, to do drainage facilities, whatever it is you need. It's about, here's a hotel project. How do we work together to reallocate or find money, bond money, and use all those other creative financing tools that might be out there, in addition to hopefully a grant, to make it happen. And each one is unique, and that's how we get it done.
One thing. I just wanted to add one last thing. Based on what Tim's saying, there's a lot of this that takes a lot of money.
Right.
It's going to be a long time before there's a lot of money anywhere. I don't care if it's bonds. I don't care what it is. It's going to be a long time. But one of the things that the commission, the majority of the commission actually hit on, what's practical and economical that we can do now. The wayfinding, I heard you mention that. That's one of the things. Certainly starting on our stormwater master plan. It's something Timmy hit on last month, coming up with an action plan for increased lighting. I mean, there's a lot that can be done now in this area that works economically, is fairly easy to implement. And so I'm just hoping that in all of the discussion of hotel projects and buying up private property at some point down the line, that we don't lose sight of what we can start doing now in this area. There were some great suggestions last month at this board in terms of starting to work with the county on not only the lighting, the policing, and so I really hope that stays very much as much of a focus as the please find my prince and have him come kiss me awake and make me, like the princess, as there is to the little dwarves that are just working. We need to keep both of those going, so. That's a height joke again. Full of them.
And the quick answer is yes, we're
Okay.
doing both.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right, item 11, public comments. John. And tell me, how do we do the 3-minute thing? Do you control that? Okay. Well, there's a switch right here, and I didn't know what it did.
No, Frank.
Frank.
Frank, that's not the switch. The switch is over there. John Nicholson, 413 North Grandview Avenue. I'm glad you didn't buy a pig in a poke. I'm glad you looked into the E-zone. There's a lot there, and I know the staff is used to coming in and saying, here it is, pass it, boom, the city wants you to do it, and boom. There's a lot going on, and there's a lot more going on, and I'm glad you're going to look at it. It's about time. Secondly, if we're really going to do this E-zone, we really have to look at it from the beginning and constantly look at it. We just went through, the city bonded $8 million for roads and sidewalks. They did a little bit in Main Street area. Then they found out that, oops, we have all this money left over, and you guys didn't get it. If they really wanted this E-zone, they could have done all of your sidewalks and all of your roads, and they could have put in those ribbons, and this area would have looked dynamic. And yet they decided not to do it. And it should have come to you all to realize what you could have done with this whole area, not just the E-zone section of it. The trolley, they had an opportunity. You all are paying for a trolley that does not go down your Main Street. Main Street is the core of the E-zone, and that's where the trolley should have gone, especially if you're paying for it. And it goes down International instead. the standards. You've paid $10 million for A1A, $1.5 million for the boardwalk, and right off the bat, the benches don't work. They had to take the benches out, the standards out, the trash cans came out, all of the stuff, because they were the wrong things. They rusted, they fell over, they broke, etc. So wasted billions of dollars. You have to look at that so you don't continue to do that. Main Street lighting. For 6 weeks, actually, the lower half of the lighting on the west side of A1A was out. The height of the tourist season, June and July. All the lighting are out on Main Street, on A1A. What does it look like to tourists when they see all the lights out for the entire week that they're here? It's a switch or something, and it goes out every so many months. So why don't we fix it? There's a light out at Ocean Avenue and A1A that's been out, 5 years, and we haven't fixed it yet? What does it look like to tourists when we don't take care of our own? The E-zone is going to add, 1,400 parking spaces. You have 1,200 and some odd there now. So with all of this that they're going to do, they're only going to add 100 parking spaces. It's the same thing we had with the parking garage. We only ended up with 200 additional parking spaces when that parking garage went in. It's not a great deal to do. So if we're going to put parking there, we have X amount of parking. Once we put buildings on those parking, we're going to replace it, so we're going to have a net gain of 100 parking spaces. It doesn't seem worthwhile. I wish you'd look at that. The object, that plaza that's going to go in, that they're going to bulldoze the buildings on A1A and Main Street. I'm not sure the value of it, and I wish you all would discuss the value of that, the water taxi and the beach club. I mean, these things I think you should discuss. Why put money into it and put all your effort into it if they really won't function well? Thank you.
Thank you, John. All right, board comments. And before we start with the board comments, what I'd like to ask you to be thinking about or perhaps comment on is where do you think this board should attempt to put some more focus or some of its energy? Some direction, if different from what we've been doing. Perhaps I personally think we should try to be a little more active in some areas such as the lighting and the security and how we can try to help encourage some changes on those areas out there. But I would also like to have your all's input relative to that. And also when we come to the meeting, we're going to be done tonight, it looks like in 2 hours. I would like to kind of see that as our goal. Let's not just make comments just for the sake of making a comment if it's not really adding to something. I'd like to see, just try and be a little more focused. And I'd like in the staff and the presentations, maybe a little more bullet point oriented, and because we're going to ask questions anyways, then we can focus in on that. I'd like to just try to pick up the pace a little bit during the meetings. But now I'd like to open it up to the board members and get your comments with respect to any normal comments and also thoughts relative to what we can do on some of these new areas. And John mentioned something that just the lighting, and this is out for 5 years or months or this or that. I would question whether the city has like a mapping of an inventory as to who's responsible for which lights and where they're at. So if a light's out and someone calls in, we know it's a county light, it's a state light, it's a city light, it's a commercial light, okay? And so, we certainly can't fix something if we don't even know whose light it is to begin with. But so that's just something that occurred to me that we may want to look at trying to get some cooperation and direction going on. And with that, I'll open it up and start on the left.
Start on this side, yeah. On the financial question, Reed, I fully respect that there are numbers and dollars spent that really are not the responsibility of this board. But I'm wondering if it isn't too much to ask if we could have some numbers on the areas that are the responsibilities of this board. Because we're asked, based on the accuracy of the information given to us by staff, we're then asked to make recommendations to pick one thing over another. And it's very hard to do if we don't know what the dollar amounts are. The whole discussion on the grant program, to me, is academic if I don't know the numbers of dollars that are spent for the programs and the properties that received them. And now maybe you've already done that with the previous board, but there are three of us who are new this time, and I think it helps make a decision if you know what the dollars are. So without asking you to do anything, extra work, if you could provide that, I agree with the chairman. I think our meetings will be much quicker if we have more information on the front end in the way of the reports, and then it's not an interrogation back and forth and back and forth. So the more, I think, information you can give us in a streamlined form, I think the easier it is for us to make decisions. Because when you get the responses from this panel is when they haven't been given all the information. Then it's pulling teeth.
Well, we can certainly get you the numbers for the next discussion.
That would be helpful in those areas that we are responsible for. Thanks.
Tim?
The only thing I would say as far as what, where the direction you think our board should go, and I've said it time and time, that, it's the nuts and bolts, it's the amenities. When I say amenities, I'm talking about, clean tiles in hotel rooms, safe streets, lights, clean streets, things like that. And the people that come here, if they feel comfortable and they feel welcome, then that goes a long way. And, to be a little bit more proactive. I mean, we can wait for the buildings and the parks and things like that, because God only knows when they're going to come down the line. But like Tracy said, things that we can do now, the general housekeeping stuff, things like that, and become a little bit more proactive than.
Microphone.
No.
Excuse me.
But that's it.
I just caught her out.
Thank you. Tracy?
No comments.
Dave?
No comment.
Teresa?
I'm in favor of a 2-hour time.
But seriously, for example, this evening's agenda, for us to consider the redevelopment plan and to give feedback, I felt very ill-prepared and incapable of rendering any comments, because I'm sort of getting up to speed, but I like to get the information so I can read it and think about it and make a more informed response. And I don't know if it's at all possible, but I would request that if we could get the packet or the information, email, on the Friday prior to the meeting. But I love the idea of bulleted items, and all I'm asking is that staff help us analyze the information better, so we can be more efficient at the meetings.
Thank you.
I noticed the ISB fountain is out again, and I called, and we talked about the problems, and there's no money to put a new one in, a new fountain.
To the pump?
The pump is burned out, and because of the low water level, it burned out on them. My husband tells me that this is ridiculous, that keeps getting burned out, and they can't replace it until October, of course. So when the new budget comes in, you have some more money. There is a switch that you can put on it for a very nominal amount. When the water drops, it will automatically shut it off, and it won't burn the pump out.
Would you, after the meeting, you and I will talk. I want to get some information from you about.
My husband, and he can tell you.
Okay,
what
I'll do
I'm
that
talking
because
about, if you will,
there's some information I haven't received on this. I'm assuming that it was getting fixed, so I'm going to do some follow-up. Okay.
When I talked to Mr. Eisenecker, is it? Brad?
Brad Eisenecker.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He said that there was no money to pay for a new one until after October. And then Tom talked to him, and they told him what you could do, and he never heard of it. So
Okay.
if you would pick up on that,
I'll follow
it would
up.
be wonderful, because this is about the third pump that's gone out of there in the last year or couple of years, and this is an expensive item that could be taken care of in another way.
Yeah, it'd be
Okay.
either equivalent of bilge pump float switch in
Yeah.
reverse,
Right.
like in a boat, when the water comes up,
Right.
it turns on. In this
Right.
case, the water goes down, it turns off.
Yeah, exactly. What I'm saying.
Yeah.
And they aren't that expensive, and they keep replacing pumps,
No.
and it's wasting money.
Best switch is $50 or $60.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Well,
I think that's about it.
Truman? Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Well, I would just like to get some specific feedback. We raised the issue last week dealing with the Ocean Center and security out there, in
Oh.
coordination with the county and trying to get something going on that. And yes, Gary?
Yeah, I'm very glad that you reminded me of that. After the presentation last meeting, I was very concerned about the nature of the information, so I did a little research and pulled some public information that was available, hundreds and hundreds of telephone calls from the Main Street redevelopment area into the 911, and all of the responses have been extremely timely back to our police force. And I think probably the problem that was cited on the boardwalk had nothing to do with the sheriff at all. It had to do with the information bounced back to the sergeant and whether or not that Daytona Beach City police officer felt it was important enough to immediately send an officer. And I went through pages of this information, and it certainly appears to me that the 911 responses have been almost instantaneous and very professional on the part of the sheriff. Now, beyond that, I didn't look at our police department on the response records and all that, but I think the sheriff might have gotten a little bit of a bad rap at the last meeting because we didn't have all of the information, which is very available.
Yeah, and the other issue though was also trying to see if we can't get some assistance from the county in helping with the security surrounding the Ocean Center and such, which from what I understand is somewhat non-existent. Right. And so I'd like to solicit any suggestions as to how we might approach that. You know, I was just walking through the other day in what's a little right by the crossover from the parking garage over to Ocean Walk, where all the little dolphins.
Dolphin Park.
I thought you were gonna say hoodlums.
Yeah, well, and I was looking for some lighting,
No.
and I couldn't find a light.
Now you know we talked when I complain about it over there how dark Coates Avenue, you know, Coates Street,
I mean,
and that surrounding area there. It's so dark once you get off the main drag.
This
It's
is
awful.
right by the dolphins,
Yeah.
and I couldn't find a light. And you know, you wonder why we have people hanging out there and everything. And it seems like there's no excuse for not having. We have buildings we can put lights on and everything.
And we don't have to worry about turtle lighting there. And, you
Yeah.
know, you turn the lights on when the cockroaches hide.
So you know, the whole lighting on that, I think we need to get your feedback as to how we can approach trying to deal with that and get the county involved in that too, and such. We got this beautiful Ocean Center there, and then it's dark and gloom around it. So.
Well, and just forget about the riffraff that are in that tends to congregate in there. Just the people. If you come there on a Saturday night when we do the band shell does the concerts and the fires there. If you see the droves of people crossing that street, and I mean it's just and I'm right there on the corner and I watch them and it's scary because it's dark. I mean it's just forget about getting mugged this and that. You see. Elderly people carrying beach chairs, crossing the street, trying to get up on curbs, and coming around that corner. It's just not safe.
Yeah, and it may just be we may just have to take one little area, and John help us out with areas that you see that hey, we need to see about getting some lighting in this area, and it may simply be involved. Some of us talking to our county or whatever and such and saying, hey, we need some light here. Look at this. Come on out and see it at night, and see if we can, one area at a time.
Actually, I was going to suggest, because after that conversation, had a conversation with some of the commission members and the mayor, if the commission would just direct the city manager to get with the county manager to start working on these things, it's an easy thing to do. And also, I just emailed all the county members It's easy to go on. This is, and again, hitting a member of this board, E-zone, this is something that has to work for everybody. Be great. These are easy things to do, and it's so easy to do that. So if they started hearing from the board as a whole.
Well, and our commissioners too, we need to be thinking about
Exactly.
how we communicate. Not, we sit here, and I've been on this board for a little over a year, and we tell Reed things, and he's got a lot of things to do, and Jason and such, but, telling Reed isn't gonna get some of these other things done. He can't go tell the city manager what to do. We can, he may listen or not, but, and our other, and many of us know our county council and such, so we just need to decide what needs to be done and where we need to put some energies and go after it, I think, and we can do that outside of these board meetings. So.
And I want to make one more comment. I've been attending the bandshell music every Saturday night, and I have never seen any of my board members down there at that bandshell. And we donated money to it. Some of that music is fabulous. Last Saturday night, there was about 17 mostly local MDs playing in the band, and it's free. We always put money in towards a donation for the Friends of the Bandshell, but I wish Angela was here to hear that. But anyway, I just think that some of us should go down there and really know what is going on every Saturday night. I bet you there was over 3,000 people down there last Saturday night.
More people. It's
Pardon?
amazing. It's amazing how many people go to that.
Yes.
And that's one of the things that our funds go to as an actual community impact. It's something that benefits and gives us a good review versus
Yes.
being run over on the beach, mud, and things like that. That's a good thing.
Now, Frank Heckman is the vice chair of the Friends of the Bandshell, and he's the MC. He does a wonderful job, and of course, that's Frank's forte. And
That's why none of us would have.
I'm not going there on that one, don't even.
All right.
Go there.
Gary said that. I'm only.
But anyway, I think it'd be nice for some of you to go down. I really think that it's a worthwhile, and to see the number of people that is down there, it amazes me.
Thank you, Virginia. And we stand adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Quiet.